My mentally ill wife crashed our car for an insurance claim and accidentally unalived someone, then went totally insane during the prosecution process. Rachel had been struggling with depression for years before the accident. She'd been on medication, seeing a therapist twice a week, and I thought we had it under control. But looking back now, I missed every single warning sign. The crash happened on a Tuesday evening in March. Rachel was driving home from her sister's house on Highway 17 when she crossed the center line and hit another car head-on. The other driver, a 3-4-year-old woman named Michelle, died at the scene. Rachel survived with a broken collarbone and 3 cracked ribs. When I got to the hospital, Rachel was sedated and couldn't talk. The police officer waiting outside her room asked me questions I couldn't answer. Had Rachel been drinking? Was she suicidal? Had she mentioned anything about insurance money? I told him no to everything, because as far as I knew, it was all true. Rachel woke up the next morning and told me she couldn't remember anything. Complete blackout. The doctor said trauma could cause memory gaps, so I believed her. 2 weeks later, the police showed up at our house with a warrant. They'd found search history on Rachel's laptop. How much is accidental death insurance payout? Can police prove intentional car crash? Best ways to stage a car accident. The searches were dated 3 days before the crash. Rachel broke down crying and confessed everything. She said she'd planned to crash the car into a tree to collect the insurance money because we were drowning in debt. She never meant to hurt anyone else. She just lost control of the wheel. The prosecutor charged her with vehicular manslaughter and insurance fraud. Because of her mental health history, her lawyer pushed for a psychiatric evaluation. The court ordered her to be held at a state mental facility for 60 days while doctors assessed her competency to stand trial. I visited her every Sunday. The first few visits seemed normal. Rachel was quiet, remorseful, taking her medication. She'd cry and apologize and say she didn't know what she'd been thinking. But around the 3rd week, something shifted. She stopped making eye contact when I talked. She'd stare at a spot on the wall behind my head and smile at nothing. When I asked what she was thinking about, she'd say things like, "The numbers are lining up," or "Michelle understands now." I asked the doctors about it. They said she was adjusting to new medication and might seem a little off for a while. They assured me it was normal, but nothing about Rachel felt normal anymore. Week 5, she started writing in a journal obsessively, pages and pages of tiny handwriting that she wouldn't let anyone read. When I reached for it during a visit, she pulled it away and said, "This is between me and Michelle." I told myself it was guilt, that she was processing what she'd done in her own way. But then the nurses started calling me with concerns. Rachel had been talking to herself at night, full conversations with someone who wasn't there. She'd answer questions nobody asked and laugh at jokes nobody told. One nurse said she found Rachel standing in the corner of her room at 3 a.m., whispering, "I'm sorry, but it had to be you." The competency evaluation came back inconclusive. The psychiatrist said Rachel showed signs of severe dissociation, but couldn't determine if it was genuine or performed. The prosecution argued she was faking to avoid prison. Her defense said she'd had a complete psychological break. The court scheduled a second evaluation with a different doctor. During that assessment, something happened that changed everything. Rachel told the psychiatrist she had proof that Michelle's death wasn't an accident after all, that she'd chosen Michelle specifically. The psychiatrist called me that same day. She asked if I knew anyone named Michelle before the accident. I said no. She asked if Rachel had ever mentioned the name before March. I thought about it. Then I remembered something that made my blood freeze. 3 months before the crash, Rachel had become obsessed with a true crime podcast about a woman who disappeared from our county in 2019. The victim's name was Michelle. I went home and searched Rachel's laptop more thoroughly than the police had. In a hidden folder, I found documents, research, photos of the Michelle who died in the crash, dated 6 months before the accident. Rachel had been following her, watching her routines, learning her schedule. The crash wasn't a random accident that went wrong, and it wasn't about insurance money at all. When I confronted Rachel at the facility, she finally looked me straight in the eyes for the first time in weeks. She smiled and said, "I wondered when you'd figure it out, because the rest of the story is on my channel or linked below."